Boy, you guys really seem to like these comics are weird digressions, huh? Well, you gotta give the people what they want. So, back in the very first one of these, I offhandedly mentioned the Spider-Man clone story, generally known as the Clone Saga, or, I kid you not, maximum clonage. And it turns out that a lot of people have always wanted to know more about what is often thought of as the worst Spider-Man story ever. Okay, buckle up. Ironically, it all started with one of the best Spider-Man stories ever, the death of Gwen Stacy in 1973. Short version, the Green Goblin killed Spidey's girlfriend and then died himself pretty much exactly as he did in the first Spider-Man movie. Shortly thereafter, Spidey got a new enemy called the Jackal, today best remembered for introducing the Punisher into the Marvel Universe by hiring him to kill Spider-Man and for looking absolutely nothing whatsoever like a jackal. Jackal turned out to be a biology professor with a stalkerish crush on Gwen Stacy, who went psycho when she died and blamed her death on Mr. Lucky here. So naturally, he became a supervillain, perfected the science of cloning pretty much overnight, and brewed himself up a Gwen Stacy clone. And for good measure, a Spider-Man clone. Because he's a bad guy. It's what they do. So Spider-Man and Clone Spider-Man had a big fight, Spidey won and spent a few issues moping around about the whole situation, and then everyone pretty much forgot that any of it happened for about 2 decades off and on. Fast forward to the 1990s, and Spider-Man found himself smack dab in the middle of the most profitable and least quality-controlled era in comic book history. Marvel was jealous of the small fortune DC had raked in off hype-driven continuity shake-up stunts like Nightfall and the death of Superman, and decided to pull one of their own. Step 1, meet the Scarlet Spider, the hip, fresh, and cool alternative to boring old Spider-Man. How hip, fresh, and cool was he? 2 words. Sleeveless hoodie. Word, bro. Who was he? Why, the Spider clone, of course. Not dead after all, and now calling himself Ben Reilly. Step 2, yet another unsuccessful attempt to write their way out of the hole that the Peter-Mary Jane wedding stunt had stuck them in for a decade already. The actual back and forth of how they decided on this is way too complicated. Go read Wikipedia if you really must know, but basically the big idea was for Mary Jane to get pregnant, for Peter to retire and be a family man, and for Ben Reilly to become the new swingin' single Spider-Man. For a while, anyway. Step 3, a big twist. It turns out they had it backwards. Ben wasn't a clone, he was the real original Peter Parker, and the guy we'd been following as Spider-Man for 20 years, he was the clone. Translation, hey guys, we're not really replacing Spider-Man, we're bringing the real Spider-Man back. Yeah, nobody bought it then either. Oh, and there was also another Peter Parker clone named Kane, and you know what, I'm not even getting into that. So right around this exact same time, the speculator bubble that had been inflating comic book sales in the 90s finally started to burst, and Marvel was hit with a financial crisis and editorial shakeup that led to this story becoming even more convoluted than it already was. They ultimately spent 2 years across multiple books trying to make it all make sense, even going so far as to finally kill off Aunt May, but they couldn't stop Spider-Man sales from going right down the toilet. It got so bad that Marvel themselves published a book making fun of how stupid this was getting, called 101 Ways to End the Clone Saga. Finally, they just said screw it and decided to undo the whole damn thing with another shocking twist, and a whole lot of fan service. Ben turned out to be the clone after all, and then died. MJ had a miscarriage, or maybe she didn't. Peter took the Spider-Man title back. Aunt May turned out not to be dead because the one who died was, yes, another clone. And it was finally revealed that the whole thing, along with almost every other loose plot thread and nonsensical storyline from the last 20 years of Spider-Man continuity, was all part of a massive conspiracy carried out by Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, who wasn't actually dead and had since been reimagined as the Marvel Universe version of Lex Luthor. All of that, incidentally, took another 2 years to play itself out. Oh, and remember that baby girl Mary Jane maybe did or didn't lose? It's initially implied that she was actually kidnapped by Osborn, but they've never really dealt with it in the main books, so far as I remember. Instead, they dealt with it in, yes, an alternate universe future, where she grows up to be Mayday Parker, Spider-Girl. Ah, the 90s. I don't miss you at all. I'm Bob, and that's the big picture.